Good day everyone, and welcome once again to the continuation of the part 1 and part 2 discussion of data and process modeling, which is all about data flow diagram. In this part 3 video, we will be discussing about the correct and incorrect usage of symbols. At the same time, we will be learning about how to develop a data flow diagram. But before we continue, let us first have a review on what we have discussed in part 1 and part 2. Using the worksheets for chapter 3, part 2, we will try to review and refresh our minds from the concepts that we have just. So in this activity, the student is expected to identify the different symbols used in the data flow diagram. So we have here a given diagram, and we will try to identify and familiarize the symbols used. So what's the name of the whole process or the whole system? Now it is very clear here that there's only one big process and it is labeled 0. So the name of the system is Online Restaurant Ordering System. Then we have two entities, external entities, the customer and the administrator. And in each external entity, you can see all the inputs from the entity to the system. So these are the data that flows to the system, which are inputs, okay, and with the administrator also. And then we also have the outputs, or the information flowing from the system to the external entity. So we call this as our output. So with this one process showing with label 0 and name of the system, it is very evident that we are actually presented with the level 0 or the context diagram. So as you see, there is no data store included in this diagram. So moving on to the next diagram, as you see, this is the breakdown of the process in level 0, which is the online restaurant ordering system. It has actually sub-processes labeled from 1 to 7. So these are now the detailed processes of that system. As you see, in every process, there is at least one input and at least one output. And then the external entity is connected specifically to a certain process where it requires input, or the process is connected either to the external entity that shows flowing of information from the process to the external entity. In this diagram, you can also see that there are now data stores. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I think there are 6 data stores here. And as you noticed, same like external entities can be repeated if you remember. At the same time, you can also repeat the data stores. This is to avoid the crossing of lines. Okay, but with regards to the process cannot be repeated. So all data flows can also be repeated depending on which process needs that kind of data or information. Okay, so just a correction. Okay, this diagram involves 8 processes and it has also 7 data stores in all. So this is a concrete example of level 1 or diagram 0 DFD. Now take a look at each process. The process, as I have mentioned to you in the previous video, each process is actually like a black box. It's like you know the input, you know the output, but you don't know what is happening inside this process. So for example, process 1, register customer info. But does it shows really how the registration happens? We do not know. So in this case, we will only know, okay, how registration happens once we go to the next level of DFD, which is the child diagram. So if we intend to show the more specific or detailed processes of each process from level 1, then that's the time that we have to do the level 2 or the child diagram. But you have to check first which processes needs to be breakdown. So just like, for example, process 1, register. It is still a big process. So if you want to show that detailed processes, then you can make a child diagram specifically for this process. Now take a look at make order. How order is done. So you can also make another child process for this process 3. While monitor order, how to check or monitor the order. So you can still look for the sub-processes for this one. So you can also make another child diagram for this process number 4, and so on. But if you try to look at view, it's like viewing. So you don't have to really show specific processes for this. In that case, no need to make a child diagram for that particular process. So this is how we try to assess if the diagram still requires to have level 2 or child diagram. That's why it becomes an option whether we will still make level 2 or child diagram. So moving, okay, so we will try to have this as an example. So if you see, the process is labeled as 1.1, 1.2. Okay, so it means that 1.1 and 1.2, these are now the sub-processes or the detailed processes of process number 1. In case I will make a child diagram for process 3, then I have to begin my detailed diagram with process 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. And take note that whatever inputs or outputs that the parent has in the level 1 will also be the same input or output that the child will get. Okay, so this is an example of level 2. So to continue, let us try to learn the correct and incorrect use of DFD symbols. Try to see here, okay, at this part, this is the correct way on how we use process and connect it to the external entity and so on. So this external entity should be or must be connected to a process, whether it is giving an input or the process is giving an output. Okay, it can also be possible that an external entity gives an input, after which it will also receive an output from the same process. Or either, okay, in this example, it is correct that the employee will give an input to one process, while this process is giving an input to that entity. Okay, so this is correct examples of correct way on how to use entity connecting to a process symbol. Now, why are these not correct? Now, you have to take note that external entity to another external entity is wrong. External entity to a data store is also wrong. Giving, okay, adding information to the data store. An entity is extracting data from the data store is also wrong. Now, to make it correct, you have to put process in between. Okay, so that is how we have to use external entity symbol, connecting to either a process or a data store, or an entity to an entity. Now, look at how process symbols are connected properly with a data store. So this process is saving or adding information to the external, to the data store, and this process is getting, okay, extracting, okay, opening a certain information in order to perform as input to this process. Same way here, no problem. If one process is giving an additional information or saving something here in the data store, while this process is either, okay, saving or retrieving certain information. Same way, this is also correct. However, it becomes incorrect if you connect data store to directly connected to another data store. This is wrong. So there must be process in between. look at here in this example. Okay, this is wrong because there is only one data flow here. Only output you are giving, but the data, the process has no input. So at least the process must have at least one input and one output, because we don't know where this data comes from. Okay, why it is being processed and saved. Now in this example also, it's the same. There is only an input. Okay, the process is getting information from the from the data store, while it doesn't produce a certain output. Okay. Now, in this example, okay, the correct way on how to use a process is presented. So here you can see, okay, at least in every process, there must be one input, minimum of one input and minimum of one output. It can also be possible that there is only one input and there is two outputs, so no problem at all. Or either two inputs and one output in that particular process, or the common one, which is the process is receiving input and the input that it received is being processed, and this produce an output which later on become an input to another process, and this process will also be giving an output based on the input that it has received. Okay, but look at this example. Okay, this is wrong because all the process is producing all as output. Okay, in this example also, it is wrong because the process is getting all inputs. While here, you can see, if you look at only the symbol, it's correct. One input, one output. But look at the data. The input is date of birth, and the process is calculate grade or calculate mark. And the output is final mark or final grade. Now, this is not related to the input. So, this is absolutely wrong. So, you have to make sure that you have to use properly the correct usage of symbols. And by the way, one also recommendation is that when you name all the symbols, you have to use at least all capital letters, whether it is an external entity, process, a data flow, or a data store. So this is the summary of how we should and must connect, okay, one symbol to another symbol. So process to process is correct. Process to external entity, correct. Process to data store, correct. But external entity to another external entity, wrong. External entity to data store is wrong. Data store to data store is wrong. To make it correct, in between, you have to put process symbol. So let us try to answer your activity in chapter 3, part 2. Okay, pages 4 to 5, activity 31. We will try to evaluate if the diagrams are using correct way the symbols. Okay, so we will evaluate the DFD, and then we will determine the correct usage of the DFD symbols. So I got your answers. I have checked your answers in this, but I have seen that some were not able to properly identify and label. At the same time, you have not properly also indicate what is the reason why it is wrong and how to make it correct. So given 4 diagrams are here. So based on the given data flow diagrams, check how the symbols are used. Encircle all the errors found and write short details about why it is wrong and how to make it correct. So here, class, this is the first mistake, okay, that we have. Okay, entity connected to the data store is wrong. Okay, so there must be process in between. Another wrong here is this process symbol, it all receives an input but it has no output. Same way, process number 2 is wrong because all are, these processes are just, giving outputs, but it has no data flow as input. Okay, and then another mistake that we have here is that the data store to data store is connected. So this is wrong because we have to provide a process symbol here. So for now, this is all about video, part 3 video. So see you in the next video.